Welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Kive, and it's so good to be here. Now, in less than 1 week, federal lawmakers will be going on recess for the Christmas and New Year holiday. Now, as expected, lawmakers are trying to tidy up things before they go on recess. But a serious issue unexpectedly came up during the week. That is the accusation made by the CBN that the NNPC failed to remit $48.9 billion, all proceeds, to the Federation account. Let's find out how lawmakers reacted to this. In what appears to be a case of 1 week, one trouble, there has been media reports of an allegation by the central bank governor that the state oil company failed to remit $48.9 billion, all proceeds, to the Federation account. This allegation drew the attention of lawmakers.
As a parliament, this is a very grave issue that the parliament owes a duty of responsibility to the public to ensure that we get to the bottom of this issue.
Senator Adetumbi said the Committee on Public Accounts, of which he is a member, wrote to the CBN to seek further clarification.
I'm glad to inform you that the central bank has also written to the public accounts confirming this matter, and we have the table of analysis of remittances that ought to come into the Federation account.
Senate President David Mark then directed the Committee on Finance to probe the allegation and report back in 7 days, but a lawmaker was not pleased with this decision.
This new dimension of letter coming from central bank was not discussed with me. But whatever it is, I think rather than, because we don't have the details at this point, and rather than going into any more further detailed discussion, I will refer the report to the Committee on Finance.
I will say on national television that I consider David Mark a great man. But I will also say that for the first time, he has made what I consider a big mistake. And I will plead with him to please reverse himself, to allow this matter to be referred to the next legislative day so that we can debate it. He has now taken for himself a privilege that should belong to the entire chamber, and that is hearing and then subsequent reference to the appropriate committee.
Assuming for a moment but not conceding that I made a mistake. So you cannot come by just mere privilege and say reverse yourself. As at today, we do not have the details. The committee can go and look at it, and if they come back, there will be extensive and detailed discussions on it.
The matter, however, assumed a political dimension when senators from the All Progressives Congress (APC) called a press conference where they asked President Jonathan to take prompt action on the allegations.
Who actually authorized the lodging of this money? Yes, where? If at all the money is not missing, then who gave authorization for the opening of these accounts where these monies are paid, contrary to Section 162 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Number two, who gave authorization for appropriation of these monies? Number three, if these funds are lodged elsewhere, what happens to interest accruing to these accounts? Ladies and gentlemen, all of us here love this country. We have no other country but Nigeria. Today, whenever you travel out, Nigeria is painted as a very corrupt society. This is not good enough for a country with a population of 170 million people, richly endowed in human and material resources, and yet this country still remains one of the poorest in the world.
Senator Akume also said he was saddened that the presidency has not implemented the recommendations of previous probes by the National Assembly, such as the fuel subsidy probe and the pension scam probe. He asked the presidency to ensure that this issue is not swept under the carpet.
We have not forgotten the report which was compiled and presented to the House by the Farouk Committee on fuel subsidy. Nigeria remains a country whose fuel subsidy is as big and as uncontrollable like the federal budget. That report, nobody is implementing. This matter cannot be swept under the carpet. We are determined to follow it to the fullest, and we want you to join us in doing this. One of your responsibilities is to also, as much as possible, identify with the people by ensuring that those of us who are charged with higher responsibilities conform with very high standards expected of people in public office.
In the wake of a saga on issues involving remittances from crude oil sales, the House of Representatives is looking intently at the operations in the oil and gas sector, particularly the issue of oil theft. Now, the House is all set to begin investigating crude oil theft in the country, which has led the country to lose so much revenue.
My name is Hassan El-Badawi.
It was a motion that cuts the interests of most lawmakers. The motion drew the attention of the House to plans to sell the country's oil refineries after billions of naira had been spent on turnaround maintenance for the refineries.
Further worried that there appears to be a clear contradiction between the position of the Minister and that of the Director General of the Bureau of Enterprise with regard to the privatization of refineries, as the latter stated that the nation's refineries would be available for privatization after the Petroleum Industry Bill has been passed into law. Disturbed that the minister's action seems to be in isolation of what the regulatory authorities, that is the National Council on Privatization and the BPE, had resolved on the matter. Further disturbed that the SARA reporters of Tuesday, November 26, 2013, alleged that 4 friends of the Minister of Petroleum are being schemed to emerge as preferred bidders by any means necessary, I quote, which development should not be easily dismissed, given her seeming desperation to execute this agenda as an aftermath of the resolution of the House on the report of the Ad hoc Committee on Fuel Subsidy.
The motion was passed unanimously.
Those in support of this motion, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it.
A joint committee of the House has been mandated to look into the matter and report back to the House in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, an ad hoc committee of the House has been inaugurated to investigate and come up with solutions that will address the problem that has cost the country billions of dollars in earnings.
Illegal bunkering has caused Nigeria to lose an estimated $5 billion, about 780 billion naira annually, amounting to about $400 billion since independence. Statistics show that a total of 350,000 barrels per day was lost to illegal bunkering in 2012, representing an increase of about 45% over the figure of 2011. And 67% over that of 2010. While the trend for 2013 is even more alarming, and unless the government summons the will to fight the menace, the situation will further worsen the country's economic woes. The rising level of crude oil theft and pipeline vandalization, particularly in the Niger Delta region, has reached and assumed higher dimensions. The ugly development has made operators in the Nigeria oil and gas industry one of the most expensive in the world. Attacks on production facilities have led to several shutdowns and declaration of force majeure by the international oil companies.
The Speaker of the House at the event said the committee should be clear that their task would not be an easy one.
It will be foolish to think of the culprits in terms of area boys who break pipelines. We must realize that without the protection of highly placed people, without the connivance of officials and experts in the sector, the activity of illegal bunkering would have been curtailed long ago. Therefore, we cannot succeed unless we ensure that the criminal groups involved in oil theft and the so-called investors or godfathers who are backing them are correctly identified and exposed. We cannot succeed unless the House can investigate the entire process of operation, from pipeline rupture through to refinery and end users, and put forward sanctions that can be brought against those involved, however highly placed. The committee needs to unravel the adverse impact of oil theft on federal government revenues and the destruction of oil asset value for leaseholders in the Niger Delta. You have to show the people in these oil-producing areas the incalculable damage these bunkerers are doing to the environment and the economy of our people. This House must use its influence to ensure that the law enforcement agencies approach their investigation of the criminals engaged in oil fields theft from a more sophisticated angle.
The committee is to, among other things, determine how stolen crude oil is transported out of the country, identify the owners of the vessels, and ascertain the countries aiding the crude oil trade.
I believe our intention is not to preempt the investigation and indict anybody, or it is not to serve as a vote of no confidence of anybody. But like what usually transpires, you see, there are currently some dilemmas as to the fact that even when vessels are impounded, prosecution becomes very difficult. So we want to look at even the laws so that those agencies of government can have the necessary impetus to now prosecute and take necessary punitive measures. But our investigation does not in any way suggest a lack of confidence in anybody yet, until we have proven otherwise.
The committee will also be expected to come up with appropriate legislation to discourage oil vandalism and theft in the country.
The Senate Committee on Aviation 2 weeks ago began investigating the cause of the Associated Airline plane crash and the frequent air mishaps in the country. The committee continued with the public hearings during the week and invited the Minister of Aviation and heads of aviation parastatals to come and shed light on what caused the accident and the true states of the aviation sector. So let's find out what transpired during the public hearing.
Vehicles.
After several adjournments, the Minister of Aviation, Mrs. Stella Odua, appeared before the Senate Committee on Aviation. This investigative hearing was called by the Senate after the Associated Airline plane crash to unravel the cause of the several air crashes and air-related incidences in the past few years. It also examined the state of the country's aviation sector. The minister and some aviation professionals tried to explain what could have caused the crash.
The most horrifying things we found were, number one, the safety and the security critical equipment and its installations were mostly in obsolete condition. Most of them were unserviceable, and in some cases were unavailable.
The minister also spoke of the challenges she inherited when she became minister, but the Senate leader was not satisfied and wanted more answers.
Also, we met completely decayed infrastructure at all the airports, and the dilapidated nature was just horrible. One of them is the firefighting. Just to give one example, the firefighting base we have, it's so sad that firefighters will not even want to stay there. And not just that bad, the equipment and the facilities they require to work with just doesn't exist. And so the airport facilities, we went around all the airport facilities. The airport services were so bad, the air conditioners were not working, Some air conditioners were older than some of our staff that we went around with. The toilets were horrible. The trolleys, the elevators, it's all in such a dilapidated and unserviceable nature. We have some of the pictures and we would like to share those pictures as we get there.
We want to know when was the aircraft purchased. We want to know when was the last sea check done. We want to know who authorized aircrafts to fly. We want to know the pilots. What are their qualifications? The co-pilot, what is his qualification? We want to know what was the last flight that particular aircraft did, from where to where. Who cleared this aircraft to fly that day? These are some of the questions that is supposed to be provided on incidences.
Lawmakers then directed questions to officials of the different aviation parastatals.
By NCAA rules and regulations, how old, what is the maximum age of a pilot? Because me, if I know a pilot is 64 years old, I will abort my flight.
The pilot in command was 64. It is also true that by law, pilots are allowed to fly to the age of 65.